Hi, this is the historical passage from the College Board Official SAT Practice 7, and I'm going to walk you through the entire passage and all the questions in the next couple of minutes. First of all, we should read the intro part, which gives you a quick peek into the main idea and relationship between those two passages. From this intro, we know that it was written around 1850s. It is a debate about whether freedoms enjoyed by men should be extended to women as well. So, it was one of the three most common topics of the historical passages, which are women's rights, abolitionism, and the Revolutionary War. Normally, I don't read the entire passage. For pair passages like these, I would just read the first 20 lines of the first passage and then solve all the questions related to the first passage, which are questions 32 to 34. Then I'll read about 20 lines of the second passage and then finish the rest of the questions. So the first 20 lines of this passage mainly talks about the social changes that would raise women's status to the level equal to men, which the author believed to be lawless fancies. So he is against women's pursuit of equal rights. Then let's start solving the questions. Question 32 is a vocab question. In line 9, the word raise most nearly means. For this type of question, I'll just read a sentence that contains the word. Here, I believe the social changes will raise women and make her more and more the equal of men. Then, I'll plug each and every answer into the context to see which one makes sense. 3 answers make sense here if being plugged in: cultivate woman, nurture woman, and elevate woman. If this happens, the trick is to pick the one that has the closest meaning to the given word. So, I'll pick D, elevate, because it has the closest meaning to the word raise. For question 33 and 34, those two questions are related. Question 34 asks you to find the best evidence for the answer you picked for question 33. I call this command of evidence questions. My trick is always to find the evidence first, because the evidence has to be related to the question asked. So here the evidence should be about the consequence of men and women being treated as identical in nature. So there has to be some consequences in the evidence. Let's check the evidences first. Choice A, B, and D all mention the equality between men and women, but not the consequences, while choice C not only talks about the equality, but also the consequence, which is here. Make one sex equal to another, both are degraded, so the evidence is C. Then we go back to question 33. It's pretty obvious that the answer should be B because degrading the evidence is paraphrased into harmed here. Since I finished all the questions related to the first passage, I'll read the second one, but just the first 20 lines here. I don't want to spend too much time reading the passage because from the intro, I know it's debate. So the second passage is going to rail against the main claim of the first passage, which means that the second passage is going to support women's equal rights. I'm going to skip reading here. Feel free to pause the video and check the passage yourself. So let's jump into the questions. Question 35, again, is a vocab question. Line 53 says here, adjust equality instead of the dominion of the strongest, which means women and men should be equal instead of being dominated only by men. Then I plug all the answers in and find that C and D don't make any sense at all. I'm hovering between A and B. Then I realize that omnipotence throws me off as well because it means godlike power, which doesn't fit the context. So the only answer left is B. Question 36 and 37 are related command of evidence questions. As I said before, I like to find the evidence first. I use the trick called line number rule that works 85% in this type of question, which I will expound specifically in future videos. You see the line number here, 53, in question 35, which means 85% of the chances. The right evidence for question 37 should be after line 53, which means A and B only hold 15% of the chances to be the right one, while C and D hold 85% of the chances. I'm not saying that I will disregard A and B at once. All I'm saying is that I will focus on C and D first. Then I know that the evidence should be related to the question asked. Question 36 asks the reason why the gender roles are resistant to change. So the evidence should be about gender roles and their resistance to change. Evidence D says nothing about the gender roles and their resistance to change. On the other hand, evidence C has this word tenacity, which means determined, hard to change, which is exactly what I want. So we have locked in evidence C for question 37. Then we go back to question 36, but remember that all we can use is the evidence we have found, which is here. In proportion to the strength of a feeling is the tenacity with which it clings to the forms and circumstances. After reading this, I rule out C and D, but I'm not sure about A and B. This is the tricky part of SAT reading. There usually are two confusing choices left, but you have to sift through the given evidence to find a perfect match. So I read the evidence again, and then I realize that the tenacity clings or attaches to the social forms, but A says it serves as a basis, which means it is wrong. So A is wrong, I go with B. Question 38 requires knowledge from both passages, which means technically you have to find the evidence from both passages to make sure that you've got the right answer, which I have highlighted here and here. In the first passage, it says, I believe that the social changes which bring nearer to the same level of father and son, master and servant, superiors and inferiors will raise woman and make her more and more the equal of man. In the second passage here, it says, but of all relations, that between man and woman was sure to be the last to throw off the old rule. Both passages mention the fact that the changes in gender roles would be a part of a broad social shift toward a greater equality. So obviously the answer is A. But I don't think you have to find those two sentences to get the answer because you don't have the time to do so during the test. My suggestion is to pick one answer based on your impression of those two passages. Even if you get it wrong, you have saved time for other passages and questions. Question 39 asks how would the author of the first passage respond to a certain quote from the second passage. First, let's read the quote. Line 65 to 69 talks about the equal chance to occupation, which is the main idea of the second passage. And since we know that the first passage disagrees with the idea of the second passage, we know that the answer must be negative. So we can cross out A, B, and D. So we go with C. Question 40 also requires the knowledge from both passages. Since we have the basic knowledge of those two passages, we can solve this one right away. The first passage is against gender equality, while the second passage favors gender equality. So the answer is obviously A. Like question 39, question 41 asks how would the author of the second passage respond to certain quote from the first passage. First of all, let's read the quote and figure out what it means. The principle of political economy here means dividing the duty of men from those of women. Basically, it is the gist of the first passage, which is antithetical to that of the second passage. With this knowledge in our minds, we can easily pick A as our answer. So this is the entire walkthrough of this historical passage from the official SAT Practice 7. I will do more like this in other categories in the future. Please drop a like and subscribe to my channel if you find it helpful. It would mean a lot to me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Peace.